I was 27 when my brother Tyler launched his tech startup. He was 31, freshly graduated from Stanford's MBA program, and absolutely convinced he was the next Steve Jobs. Innovate Tech Solutions was going to revolutionize cloud-based project management software. He had buzzwords, a sleek pitch deck, and the kind of confidence that made investors write checks. He also had our parents' complete devotion. Tyler's company is going to change everything, Dad had announced at Sunday dinner 3 years ago. This is the kind of innovation that builds generational wealth. Mom had beamed. Our son, the entrepreneur. A CEO at 31. I'd been sitting at the end of the table as usual, eating my pasta quietly. I was working as a data analyst at a mid-sized firm, living in a modest apartment, driving a 10-year-old Honda. To them I was the boring one. The safe one. The daughter who chose stability over ambition. What they didn't know was that I'd been day trading since college. Not recklessly, carefully, methodically studying patterns and building algorithms. I'd turned my graduation gift of $5,000 into $50,000 by 23. By 25 I had $400,000. By 27 my portfolio was worth $2.3 million. I'd learned to keep it quiet. Every time I'd mentioned an investment win, Dad would say something like, lucky timing, or beginner's luck. When I'd suggested I understood financial markets, Tyler had literally patted my head and said, "That's cute, but there's a difference between playing with stocks and real business strategy." So I'd stopped mentioning it. I'd kept working my boring job, kept living in my modest apartment, and kept building my portfolio in silence. When Tyler had announced he was raising a Series A round for Innovate Tech, I'd done my homework. I'd analyzed his business model, studied his competition, reviewed his technical architecture. The software was actually good, not revolutionary but solid. Well designed. Practical. With the right funding and execution, it could capture a meaningful market share. I'd wanted to invest. Not because he was my brother but because it was genuinely a good opportunity. I'd seen worse companies get $100 million valuations. Tyler's startup had real potential. But I'd known better than to approach him directly. So I'd created a shell corporation, Cascade Ventures LC, and structured it through my investment advisor, Patricia Morgan at Silver Lake Capital. Patricia managed my portfolio and understood the need for discretion. She'd set up the entity, filed all the proper paperwork, and made sure everything was completely legal and separate from my personal identity. Then Patricia had reached out to Tyler's fundraising team with an investment offer. $40 million for 28% equity. A substantial Series A that would fully fund his product development, marketing, and expansion plans for the next 3 years. Tyler had been ecstatic. A $40 million commitment from a serious venture capital entity? It was more than he'd hoped for. The deal had closed in 6 weeks. Cascade Ventures became Innovate Tech's primary investor and majority stakeholder. I became my brother's boss, essentially. And he had absolutely no idea. That was 3 years ago. Since then I'd watched from behind the corporate veil as Innovate Tech grew. I'd attended board meetings via video conference with my camera off, labeled as Patricia Morgan representing Cascade Ventures. I'd reviewed quarterly reports, approved budgets, and guided strategy decisions, all while Tyler thought he was reporting to some faceless investment firm. The company had done well. Not spectacularly but steadily. Revenue had grown from $0 to $18 million annually. They'd captured 3% of their target market. User retention was strong. The fundamentals were solid. But Tyler's ego had grown faster than his revenue. Every family dinner became a Tyler highlight reel. We just signed Microsoft as a client. Forbes mentioned us in their tech startups to watch list. I'm speaking at 3 conferences next month. Dad would beam with pride. Mom would show everyone photos on her phone. "Hi son, the CEO." I'd smile and nod and ask polite questions while internally reviewing the financial reports that told a more complete story. Yes, Microsoft was a client. A very small pilot program worth $50,000 annually. Yes, Forbes mentioned them, in a list of 50 startups, 1 sentence. Yes, Tyler was speaking at conferences, mostly because I'd approved the marketing budget that paid for sponsor speaking slots. None of that diminished the company's success. But it wasn't the unicorn story Tyler presented to the family. The breaking point came at Mom's birthday dinner last month. November 15th. The whole family gathered at an upscale steakhouse, Tyler's treat, he'd insisted. He'd arrived in a new Tesla Model S, wearing a Breitling watch, carrying himself with the kind of swagger that made waiters uncomfortable. The company's doing incredibly well, he'd announced during appetizers. We're preparing for our Series B round. Looking at a $200 million valuation. Dad had whistled. $200 million? Tyler, that's extraordinary. We're in talks with several major VC firms, Tyler had continued. Sequoia's interested. Andreessen Horowitz sent feelers. This is the big leagues now. I'd stayed quiet, cutting my steak because I knew the truth. We weren't preparing for a Series B. Our burn rate was too high, our growth too slow. The $200 million valuation was Tyler's fantasy, not market reality. And Sequoia and Andreessen Horowitz hadn't sent feelers. Their junior analyst had taken polite coffee meetings that went nowhere. But I'd learned not to correct him at family dinners. Then Tyler had turned to me. You're being awfully quiet. Not impressed by your big brother's success. It's impressive, I'd said simply. She doesn't really understand tech business, Mom had said apologetically. It's very complex. Actually, I'd said carefully, I've been following the cloud software market pretty closely. It's fascinating how. Right, your little stock hobby, Tyler had interrupted, grinning. How's that going? Made your first million yet? He'd said it like a joke, like the idea of me having serious money was absurd. I do okay, I'd replied. Works hard, Dad had said in that placating tone that actually meant, let's humor her. Data analysis is a solid career. Solid, Tyler had repeated, smirking. That's one way to put it. Look, there's nothing wrong with a stable job. Not everyone is cut out for the startup world. Takes a certain kind of risk tolerance, vision, aggressive mindset. You're more of a steady player. And that's fine. I'd taken a sip of water and said nothing. Then Tyler had dropped the bomb. Actually, speaking of investments, didn't you mention wanting to invest in Innovate Tech back when we were starting? I'd frozen. I might have mentioned it. Right. He'd laughed. I remember. You offered like $5,000 or something. Your investment fund? He'd used air quotes, grinning at our parents. It was more than that, I'd said quietly. Oh, sorry, was it 10,000? Either way, we appreciate the thought, but Innovate Tech isn't really set up for small personal investments. We work with professional venture capital firms, institutional investors, people who understand how series of funding works, equity structures, board governance. No offense, but it's just not the same league as playing with stocks on your lunch break. Mom had nodded sympathetically. Tyler's right, honey. His company deals with very sophisticated investors. It's not really appropriate for personal money. I understand sophisticated investing, I'd said, keeping my voice level. I'm sure you do in your way, Tyler had said patronizingly. But there's a difference between buying shares of Apple and structuring a multi-million-dollar venture capital deal. We're talking due diligence, term sheets, board seats, liquidation preferences. It's serious business. I'm aware of term sheets, I'd started. Look, Tyler had cut me off, leaning forward with that insufferable big brother expression. I love you. You're my sister. But you have to understand, I can't mix family money with business. It's messy. And honestly, I don't think you'd be comfortable with the kind of risk we're taking. This isn't safe, stable 9-to-5 money. This is aggressive growth strategy. We're burning through capital to scale fast. It's not the kind of thing someone with your conservative approach would understand. Conservative, I'd repeated. Risk-averse, he'd clarified. Which is smart. For you. You like your safe job, your safe investments, your safe life. Nothing wrong with that. But don't confuse that with what we're doing at Innovate Tech. We're playing a different game entirely. Dad had raised his glass. To Tyler and Innovate Tech. May the Series B be everything you're hoping for. Everyone had toasted. I'd raised my glass mechanically, my mind racing. I'd sat through 3 years of this. 3 years of being patronized, dismissed, treated like I couldn't understand basic business concepts. While I literally owned 28% of his company. While I literally controlled his funding. While I literally sat on his board under a corporate pseudonym. The rage had been quiet but absolute. After dinner, I'd gone home to my modest apartment and opened my laptop. I'd pulled up the Cascade Ventures documentation. The shareholder agreement. The funding terms. The liquidation clauses. Then I'd called Patricia. Patricia? It's Emily. I need to schedule a call with Tyler Chin, CEO of Innovate Tech. Board business. Of course. What's the agenda? I'd paused, thinking about 3 years of condescension. 3 years of being told I didn't understand business while I funded his entire operation. 3 years of watching him take credit for success that my money had built. Investment review, I'd said. I'm considering liquidating our position. There had been a long silence on the phone. Emily, you're the majority stakeholder. If Cascade pulls out, Innovate Tech loses its primary funding source. They'd have maybe 4 months of runway before they'd need to shut down or find emergency financing. I'm aware. Are you sure about this? I'd thought about Tyler's smirk. His patronizing tone. His absolute certainty that I was too small, too safe, too boring to play in his world. Schedule the call, I'd said. 2 days later, Tyler had been sitting in Innovate Tech's conference room for his quarterly board meeting. I'd watched via the video link, my camera off as usual, as Patricia had joined the call. Good morning, Mr. Chin, Patricia had said professionally. Thank you for joining us. I'm afraid we have some concerning matters to discuss regarding Cascade Ventures' investment in Innovate Tech. Tyler had looked confused. Concerning? I thought Q3 results were solid. Revenues up 12% year-over-year. We're hitting our milestones. Your financial performance is acceptable, Patricia had interrupted. However, Cascade Ventures is conducting a portfolio review, and we have concerns about the company's trajectory and leadership's strategic judgment. Leadership's judgment? Tyler's expression had shifted from confusion to defensive. What are you talking about? We're executing exactly according to plan. We're on track for Series B discussions next quarter. Mr. Chin, we need to be frank. Your Series B projections are unrealistic. Your $200 million valuation target isn't supported by your current metrics. Your burn rate is concerning. And frankly, we have questions about capital allocation decisions. Tyler had gone red. What decisions? We've been completely transparent. Every expenditure is documented. Your Tesla. Your executive compensation package. The conference sponsorships. The premium office space. These are not efficient uses of venture capital during a growth phase. Those are standard startup CEO expenses. Every tech founder is not funded by Cascade Ventures, Patricia had said coolly. We have specific expectations about capital discipline. Expectations that we feel are not being met. I'd watched Tyler's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, anger, fear. He'd built his entire identity around being a successful startup CEO. The idea that his primary investor was unhappy had clearly never occurred to him. Okay, Tyler had said, forcing calm. Hey. If there are concerns, let's address them. We can adjust spending. We can revise projections. What do you need from us? We need to discuss whether Cascade Ventures wishes to maintain our investment position, Patricia had said. The silence had been deafening. Maintain? You mean you're considering pulling out? We're evaluating all options, including liquidation of our equity stake. You can't. That would destroy the company. We're dependent on your funding for operations. If you pull $40 million out. We're aware of the implications, Mr. Chin. Which is why we're having this conversation. We need assurance that leadership is taking our investment seriously. I am taking it seriously. This company is my life. Everything I've built. His phone had rung. He'd glanced at it, irritated. I need to take this. It's my bank. Please do, Patricia had said. Tyler had answered, putting it on speaker. This is Tyler Chin. Mr. Chin, this is David Reynolds from Pacific Trust Bank. I'm calling about your business line of credit. We've been notified of potential changes in your company's capital structure, and we need to discuss your credit terms immediately. Tyler had gone pale. Changes? What changes? Our covenants require notification of any material changes in investor composition. We've received information suggesting your primary investor may be withdrawing. Is this accurate? We're just having discussions. Mr. Chin, if your Series A investor liquidates their position, your credit line will be immediately callable. That's $8 million you'd need to repay within 30 days. Tyler had looked at the video screen where Patricia's name was displayed, his expression panicked. This is a misunderstanding. Patricia, Ms. Morgan, we can work this out. We'll need to see significant changes, Mr. Chin, Patricia had said firmly. Another phone had started ringing. Tyler's cell this time. He'd looked at the screen, his hand shaking slightly. It's our CFO. Answer it, Patricia had said. Tyler had switched calls. Brian? What's wrong? Tyler, I'm getting calls from two of our major clients. They're asking about company stability. Someone told them our primary investor might be pulling out. Microsoft is threatening to pause our contract pending clarification. What the hell is going on? How did they even know? Word travels fast in tech circles. Is it true? Is Cascade Ventures withdrawing? Tyler had looked like he might be sick. We're having discussions. Strategic realignment discussions. Strategic realignment? Tyler, if we lose our primary funding, we're done. We have 4 months of runway, maybe less. We can't raise emergency Series B in that time. Everyone will know we're desperate. We'll get terrible terms or no terms at all. I know that. Tyler had snapped. I'm handling it. He'd ended the call and stared at the video screen. Patricia. Ms. Morgan. Please. Let's talk about this rationally. What do you need? What will it take to keep Cascade invested? I'd unmuted my microphone for the first time in 3 years of board meetings. Hello, Tyler. His face had gone blank. Who? It's Emily. I'd watched him process the voice. Confusion. Recognition. Complete disbelief. Why are you on this call? Because I'm Cascade Ventures, I'd said simply. I'm your primary investor. I own 28% of your company. I've owned it for 3 years. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had frozen. That's not possible, Tyler had finally said. Cascade is a venture capital firm. A real VC firm with institutional backing. Cascade is a shell corporation I created through my investment advisor. It's my money, Tyler. All $40 million of it. Mine. You don't have $40 million. I have $47 million currently. I had $52 million when I invested in you. I've made about $5 million profit on other investments since then, and your company's equity value has appreciated roughly $7 million. So my Innovate Tech stake is now worth about $47 million total. He'd stared at the screen like I was speaking another language. That's impossible. You work data analysis. You live in that tiny apartment. You drive a 10-year-old Honda, yes. Because I prefer to invest my money rather than spend it on Teslas and Breitling watches. How did you? This doesn't make sense. I've been trading since college, Tyler. I built my portfolio from $5,000 to $2.3 million by the time you launched Innovate Tech. When you needed series of funding, I saw a good investment opportunity. So I created Cascade, funded your company, and took a board seat. I've been Patricia Morgan representing Cascade Ventures at every quarterly meeting for 3 years. Patricia had unmuted. I'm the actual Patricia Morgan, Mr. Chin. Emily's investment advisor. I've been representing her interests as requested. Everything was completely legal and properly documented. Tyler had sunk into his chair. You've been on the board? You've been my primary investor this entire time. Yes. While we at family dinners. His face had shifted from shock to horror as he'd replayed 3 years of conversations. Every dismissive comment. Every patronizing lecture about business. Every time he'd explained basic concepts to me like I was a child. While you told me I didn't understand sophisticated investing, I'd finished. While you laughed about my pocket change. While you explained that I was too risk-averse for serious business. Yes. During all of that. Oh my God. The Series B discussions you've been bragging about, those are going nowhere, Tyler. Your projections are inflated. Your valuation expectations are unrealistic. And your spending habits are concerning to any serious investor. The Tesla was purchased with venture capital meant for product development. The watch was bought the same month you cut the customer service team's training budget. The premium office space costs more annually than 3 junior developers' salaries. You've been spending my money like it's unlimited while treating me like I'm too stupid to understand basic finance. His face had gone from pale to red. I didn't know. That doesn't make it better, Tyler. It makes it worse. You treated me that way because you genuinely believed I was beneath you financially and intellectually. The fact that I was secretly funding your entire operation the whole time just proves how wrong you were. Another call had come through on Tyler's phone. He'd ignored it. What do you want? He'd asked quietly. Are you really going to liquidate? Destroy the company? I'd leaned back in my chair, considering. 3 years of condescension. 3 years of family dinners where I was the boring, safe, unsuccessful daughter while he was the visionary entrepreneur. 3 years of being patronized by someone whose company only existed because of my money. I'm not going to destroy anything, I'd said finally. Despite what you think of me, I'm actually a pretty good investor. I don't make emotional decisions with $47 million positions. Then what? But things are going to change. First, your spending gets audited. Every personal expense charged to the company gets reviewed. The Tesla? You're buying that out personally or returning it. The watch? Personal expense. The conference sponsorships that are really just vanity-speaking slots? Cut entirely. Tyler had nodded frantically. Done. Absolutely. Second, your compensation package gets restructured. You're currently paying yourself $280,000 annually plus equity. That's dropping to $180,000 until revenue hits $25 million. You want startup founder money? Hit startup founder metrics. Hey. Yes. Third, you're getting a real SEO. Someone with operational experience who can rein in your spending and implement actual financial controls. I'm approving the hire and the search firm. You don't get veto power. Understood. Fourth, the $200 million Series B fantasy ends now. We're going to build a sustainable business with realistic projections. If that means slower growth, fine. I'd rather own 28% of a company worth $100 million than 28% of one worth zero because you burned through capital-chasing unicorn valuations. Right. That makes sense. And fifth, I'd said, my voice hardening, you're going to tell our parents the truth. All of it. That I'm your primary investor. That I've funded your company from the beginning. That your success is built on my capital, not just your vision. And you're going to do it at this Sunday's dinner. In front of everyone. Tyler had closed his eyes. And that's, do we have to? Those are my terms, I'd said flatly. Accept them or I liquidate my position tomorrow and you can explain to Mom and Dad why your company collapsed. I accept, he'd said immediately. All of it. I accept. Good. Patricia will send you the updated agreements. Sign them by end of day Friday. I will. Can I just say, I'm sorry. I was an ass. I was completely wrong about you. Yes, I'd agreed. You were. But you can start making it right on Sunday. I'd ended the call and sat in my apartment, hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. 3 years of hidden identity revealed in 15 minutes. 3 years of secret control brought into the light. Sunday dinner was at Dad's house. I'd arrived early, settling into my usual spot at the end of the table. Tyler had come in looking like he might throw up, which gave me a certain satisfaction. Mom had started her usual routine. Tyler, honey, how's the company? Any news on that Series B? Tyler had glanced at me. I'd raised my eyebrows slightly. Actually, Mom, Dad, everyone, I need to tell you something. About the company. About how it got funded. Dad had perked up. Oh. New investor coming in. No. Old investor. Original investor, actually. Tyler had taken a deep breath. 3 years ago when I was raising my Series A, I got a $40 million commitment from a venture capital entity called Cascade Ventures. That's been our primary funding source since launch. It's what built the company. We know that, honey, Mom had said. What you don't know is who Cascade Ventures is. He'd looked directly at me. It's Emily. Em created Cascade as a shell corporation and invested her own money. $40 million of her own money. She owns 28% of Innovate Tech. She's been on the board of directors for 3 years. She's not just my sister. She's my boss. The table had gone completely silent. Dad had looked at me. Emily, you have $40 million. I have about $47 million currently, I'd corrected. My portfolio's done well. But you work as a data analyst. I work as a data analyst because I like the work and it's flexible, I'd said. But I've been investing since college. Day trading, algorithmic trading, growth stocks, some crypto early on. I've built the portfolio over time. Mom had seemed unable to process this. You never said anything. I tried to. Remember when I mentioned making $50,000 on a tech stock in my 20s? Dad said it was beginner's luck. When I suggested I understood financial markets, Tyler patted my head and called it cute. Tyler had flinched. So I stopped mentioning it, I'd continued. I kept building my portfolio quietly. And when Tyler needed series of funding, I saw a good investment opportunity. So I funded it. Anonymously. Through a shell corporation. Because I knew if I offered directly, you'd all dismiss it as my little investment hobby, with my pocket change. Pocket change, Tyler had repeated hollowly. That's exactly what I called it. At Mom's birthday dinner. Your pocket change. You did, I'd agreed. Right before you explained that I didn't understand sophisticated investing or term sheets or how serious business works. While I literally owned 28% of your company and had been on your board for 3 years. The table had erupted. Dad asking questions about my portfolio strategy. Mom demanding to know why I'd hidden this. My aunt asking if I was actually rich. Tyler sitting silently, staring at his plate. Why didn't you just tell us? Dad had finally asked. Because you wouldn't have believed me, I'd said simply. Or you would have thought I was exaggerating or gotten lucky or somehow didn't really earn it. You're barely believing me now, and Tyler's here confirming every word. I would have believed you, Dad had protested weakly. Dad, you called me safely employed last Christmas. Like it was a gentle criticism. Tyler literally said 2 weeks ago that I'm too risk-averse for serious business. You've all spent years treating me like I'm playing with monopoly money while Tyler builds a real company. Except Tyler's real company only exists because of my monopoly money. Tyler had finally spoken. She's right. Everything she's saying is right. I've been an arrogant ass. We all have. Isn't just successful. She's more successful than me. Than any of us. She's brilliant at this. And we never even noticed because we were too busy assuming she was exactly what she appeared to be on the surface. I don't understand, Mom had said. Why live in that small apartment? Why drive that old car? If you have this kind of money. Because I'm investing it, I'd explained. Every dollar I don't spend on a fancy car is a dollar that compounds in the market. Warren Buffett still lives in the house he bought in 1958. That's not poverty. That's strategy. Dad had looked at me differently. Not dismissively. Not placatingly. But with actual respect. Maybe for the first time in my adult life. Emily, he'd said slowly, I owe you an apology. A real one. I've underestimated you significantly. We all have, Tyler had added. And I'm sorry. For everything. Every dismissive comment. Every patronizing explanation. Every time I made you feel small. You've been keeping my company alive, and I've been treating you like you couldn't understand a balance sheet. You really couldn't? I'd asked pointedly. He'd smiled slightly. Apparently not as well as you do. The conversation had shifted then. Dad asking about investment strategies. Mom wanting to know how I'd learned to trade. Everyone suddenly very interested in my boring career and safe choices and modest lifestyle. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Not just with Tyler but with the entire family. I wasn't the overlooked youngest anymore. I was the secret genius who'd funded her brother's entire empire while he patronized her. Later, Tyler had caught me in the kitchen. For real, are we okay? The company, I mean. You're not actually going to pull funding, right? Not if you follow the new terms, I'd said. Cut the wasteful spending, hire the COO, build sustainably. Do that and we'll be fine. I will. I promise. He paused. I really am sorry. I was so focused on being the successful one, I never considered that you already were. I know, I'd said. But Tyler, don't tell me you understand business better than I do anymore. I literally own your business. He'd laughed, but it was humble. Yeah. I got that message pretty clearly. The story had made it into the family lore. The time Emily revealed she was secretly rich and had been funding Tyler's company the whole time. It was told at every gathering, every holiday, every family event. Sometimes with embarrassment. Sometimes with pride. Always with a certain sense of disbelief. Tyler's company had stabilized. With proper financial controls, realistic projections and disciplined spending, Innovate Tech had actually become more attractive to investors. 6 months later, they'd successfully closed a Series B at a $120 million valuation. Not the $200 million fantasy Tyler had wanted, but a realistic number backed by solid metrics. My 28% stake was now worth approximately $34 million, a decent return on my original $40 million investment when combined with the dividend distributions I'd received. Not spectacular but solid. Sustainable. And I was no longer the invisible family member. I was Emily Chin, the data analyst who turned $5,000 into $50 million and funded her brother's tech company without him knowing. At Christmas dinner this year, Tyler had stood up with his wine glass. "I want to make a toast," he'd said. "Tim. My sister, my primary investor and the smartest person in this family. Who taught me that success doesn't always look like what you expect, and that the quietest person in the room might be the most powerful." Everyone had raised their glasses. I'd smiled, staying seated at the end of the table. My choice now, not a relegation. "To M," they'd chorused. I'd taken a sip of wine and thought about 3 years of secret board meetings. 3 years of funding my brother's dream while he dismissed mine. 3 years of being underestimated while I held all the power. "To family," I'd said quietly. "May we all learn to look a little deeper." Tyler had met my eyes across the table and nodded. A real acknowledgement. Real respect. It had only taken $40 million and a near collapse of his company to get there. But I suppose some lessons were expensive.
Absolutely not. Maxwell Porter, CEO of Porter Tech Solutions, didn't even look up from his phone as he dismissed 6 months of my work. My carefully prepared presentation still glowed on the conference room screen, showing colorful mock-ups of an app that could revolutionize how people manage their mental health. But the market research shows. I started. "Olivia," he cut me off, finally glancing up. "We're a business software company. We make accounting programs and inventory management systems. We don't do consumer apps, especially not some." He waved his hand dismissively. "Therapy thing." I gripped my laptop tighter, fighting to keep my voice steady. The mental health app market is projected to reach $3.9 billion by next year. This could open up an entirely new revenue stream for Porter Tech. "And what do you know about revenue streams?" Maxwell's smile was cold. "You're a junior developer. You've been here what, 2 years?" 3 years, I corrected, and I've contributed to every major project since. "Actually," he interrupted again, "that's something we need to discuss." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Send in Helen from HR." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I'd heard it last month when they laid off half the QA team. Helen Barnes bustled in, carrying a folder and wearing her practiced HR smile. The one that never quite reached her eyes. "Olivia," she said warmly, as if she hadn't just been summoned to help destroy my career, "please sit down." I remained standing. "What's this about?" Maxwell leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking almost pleased. "In light of recent budget constraints and your, let's call it unauthorized use of company time to develop this app idea, we're making some changes to your role." Helen opened her folder. "We're offering you a position as front desk receptionist. Same benefits, though naturally there will be an adjustment to your compensation." The rest of her words faded into background noise as I processed what was happening. They were demoting me, from software developer to receptionist, because I dared to pitch an idea outside their narrow vision. "This is ridiculous," I managed. "I'm a developer. I have a master's in computer science from MIT. "Then you should be more than qualified to handle the booking system," Maxwell smirked. "The alternative, of course, is termination. Your choice." I thought about my apartment rent, my student loans, the current tech job market. I couldn't afford to be unemployed, not now. "When do I start?" My voice sounded distant, even to myself. "Monday," Helen said brightly. "I'll email you the new job description. We'll need your developer credentials and access cards by end of day." That evening, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers and self-pity. My laptop screen showed the app mockups I'd spent months perfecting. Mindspace, a revolutionary platform combining AI-driven therapy tools with peer support networks and professional resources. I'd gotten the idea after watching my best friend Kate struggle to find affordable therapy during the pandemic. The existing apps were clunky, impersonal, or prohibitively expensive. I knew I could build something better. My phone buzzed. Speaking of Kate, I'm going to kill him, she declared when I told her what happened. Actually murder him. With his unpretentious Italian leather shoes. I managed a weak laugh. Pretty sure that won't help my career prospects. Neither will letting them demote you to receptionist. You're brilliant, Liv. Your app idea is brilliant. Don't let them. I need the job, Kate. I sighed, looking at my sad bank balance. At least for now. She was quiet for a moment. So what are you going to do? I stared at my laptop screen at the mock-ups that had gotten me into this mess. Then I noticed something. The Porter Tech VPN was still connected, my developer access still active. They wouldn't disable it until tomorrow. I'm going to build it anyway, I said slowly, an idea forming. Build what? The app? Yes. I sat up straighter, energy returning. They think putting me at the front desk will shut me up. Fine. I'll use their Wi-Fi, their electricity, their coffee. I'll build min space right under their noses. Liv? Kate sounded worried. Is that legal? As long as I use my own equipment and don't touch any company code. Perfectly legal. They can't stop me from working on personal projects during downtime. But can you really build an entire app by yourself while working reception? I thought about the coding workshops I've been running for local high school girls, teaching them the basics of app development. About Maria, the brightest student I'd ever mentored, who was now studying computer science because I showed her it was possible. I won't be doing it alone, I replied. I know exactly who to call. The next morning, before heading to Porter Tech to turn in my developer credentials, I made 3 important calls. First, to Maria. How'd you like to get some real-world development experience? Then to my college roommate Jen, now a UX designer in Seattle. Remember that app idea I told you about? I'm doing it. You in. Finally, to my cousin David, a lawyer specializing in tech startups. I need to make sure everything I'm about to do is completely legal. By Monday morning, when I took my place behind the reception desk at Porter Tech, I had a plan. My personal laptop was loaded with development tools. I had a secure cloud repository set up under a different email, and I had a team of talented people ready to work remotely. Maxwell walked past without acknowledging me, probably expecting to see me broken and defeated. Instead, I smiled pleasantly and answered the phone. Porter Tech Solutions, how may I direct your call? Between calls, I opened my laptop and began to code. The front desk turned out to be the perfect cover. No one pays attention to the receptionist. Executives would have entire conversations right in front of me about market trends, user acquisition strategies, app monetization, all valuable intelligence for my own project. I learned more about running a successful tech company in my first week as a receptionist than I had in 3 years as a developer. Maria proved to be an invaluable partner, her fresh perspective helping us avoid the bloat that plagued most corporate apps. We coded in the evenings over video chat, her enthusiasm reminding me why I fell in love with programming in the first place. Jen's design work was extraordinary, making the interface both beautiful and intuitive. She understood exactly what we were trying to achieve, an app that felt like talking to a supportive friend rather than a cold digital tool. The work wasn't easy. I answered phones and greeted visitors all day, then coded late into the night. My apartment became a command center of sticky notes and energy drink cans. I survived on cheap coffee and determination. But slowly, mind space began to take shape. 1 month into my demotion, I overheard Maxwell talking to the head of marketing about their struggling attempts to reach younger users. I made notes and adjusted our strategy accordingly. 2 months in, a board member complained about the company's outdated UI design. I sent screenshots to Jen, who incorporated the latest design trends into our app. 3 months in, I had a working prototype. The AI algorithms were learning, the peer support network was functioning, and our first round of beta testers, recruited carefully from outside the tech industry, were providing valuable feedback. I was exhausted but exhilarated. This was more than revenge now. This was about creating something that could genuinely help people. Then came the day that almost ruined everything. I was deep in code, fixing a bug in the notification system, when a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up to find Helen from HR, wearing that same practiced smile. Olivia, what are you working on? I kept my face neutral, thanking every deity I could think of that my screen was angled away from her. Just organizing my personal emails during lunch break. She nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Remember, all computer use must be related to your reception duties. Of course, I smiled back. I'll get right back to the visitor log. That night, I called an emergency team meeting. We need to be more careful, I told Maria and Jen over video chat. And we need to move faster. The longer this takes, the more chances they have to shut us down. The core features are almost ready, Maria reported. We could launch with those and add the advanced stuff later. Jen shared her screen, showing our latest analytics. Beta user engagement is off the charts. People love it, live. They're already asking when they can share it with friends. I took a deep breath, looking at the progress we'd made. We were so close. We couldn't fail now. Okay, I decided. Let's set a launch date, 1 month from today. As I ended the call, a notification popped up on my screen, an email from the App Store review team. Our initial submission had been approved. Mindspace was ready for release whenever we gave the word. I glanced at my Porter Tech employee badge at the photo taken 3 years ago when I still believed in the company's mission. In 1 month, everything would change. I just had to keep my cover for a little longer. With 1 month until launch, everything that could go wrong did. First, Porter Tech installed new monitoring software on their Wi-Fi network. I discovered this when Gary from it stopped by the front desk, wearing his usual friendly smile. Just updating security protocols, he said, typing commands into his tablet. Too many employees using company resources for personal projects. My heart nearly stopped. Had they discovered Mindspace? But Gary just winked at me. Though I'm sure you're not doing anything like that, right, Olivia? I forced a laugh, mind racing. I'd need to route all development traffic through a secure VPN now. More carefully, more slowly. Time we didn't have. That evening, during our team video call, Maria had more bad news. There's a bug in the peer support matching algorithm, she reported, sharing her screen to show lines of problematic code. It's not properly filtering inappropriate content. If we launch like this, we'd be putting vulnerable users at risk. I finished, rubbing my tired eyes. How long to fix it? At least 2 weeks of dedicated work. 2 weeks we didn't have. But we couldn't launch with broken safety features. Mindspace was meant to help people, not harm them. Then Jen spoke up, her voice hesitant. There's something else. A new mental health app just launched, called MindMender. She sent us the link. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through their website. The interface was different, but the core concept was eerily similar to Mindspace. How is this possible? Maria asked. Did someone leak our idea? I thought back to all the conversations I'd overheard at the front desk, all the executives who'd walked past while I was coding. No, I said slowly. But Porter Tech's offices are full of people who saw my presentation. The next day, I paid closer attention to office gossip. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. Maxwell Porter's nephew had just launched a startup, a mental health app startup. They hadn't just rejected my idea. They'd stolen it. During lunch break, I did some digging. MindMender had raised $2 million in seed funding. Their launch was being covered by major tech blogs. And their founder, James Porter, was being hailed as a visionary entrepreneur. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called David my lawyer cousin. Can they do this? I demanded. Just steal my idea. Ideas aren't copyrightable, he reminded me gently, unless you can prove they used your actual code or designs. Which I can't, because they just took the concept. I slumped in my chair. So what do I do? Build something better, he said simply. You've been working on this for months. You understand the problem deeper than someone who just copied an idea. Use that. He was right. MindMender was sleek but superficial. Their ad responses were generic. Their peer support system was basically just a chat room. They'd built what they thought people wanted, not what people actually needed. That night, I gathered the team. Change of plans, I announced. We're not rushing to launch anymore. We're going to take the time to do this right. We spent the next week refining every feature. Maria rebuilt the matching algorithm from scratch, making it smarter and safer. Jen redesigned the interface to be more intuitive, more human. I worked through lunches, stayed late after my reception shift, coded through weekends. My apartment became a cave of coffee cups and takeout containers. Kate started dropping off actual meals, worried I'd get scurvy. You need to take care of yourself, she insisted. Isn't that what your app is all about? She had a point. So I started using MinSpace myself, testing each feature as we built it. The AI therapy tools helped me manage stress. The peer support network connected me with others building startups while working day jobs. Slowly, something unexpected happened. Watching MindMender succeed stopped feeling like failure. Instead, it clarified our mission. We weren't just building an app anymore. We were building a community, but corporate espionage wasn't done with us yet. One morning, about 2 weeks before our new launch date, I arrived at work to find someone had been through my desk. Nothing was obviously missing, but things were slightly out of place. My laptop's position had shifted by a few inches. I checked the security footage from my phone's hidden camera, installed after Helen's warning visit. At 3 a.m., a figure had entered the lobby using an executive key card. They'd spent 20 minutes going through my desk drawers. The image was grainy, but I recognized the way they moved. James Porter, the MindMender founder, Maxwell's precious nephew. They were getting nervous. That night, I moved all our code to a new repository, changed every password, and activated two-factor authentication on everything. Then I did something risky. I left my work laptop in my desk drawer, with a special surprise installed. Sure enough, the next night, James returned. This time, my hidden camera caught him copying files from my laptop onto a USB drive. What he didn't know was that the files were decoys. Fragments of code that looked like MindSpace but wouldn't actually work. And buried in those fragments was a digital signature, proof that he tried to steal our work. Insurance, just in case. But we still had bigger problems. The deadline was approaching, and our budget was running dangerously low. We'd been funding everything ourselves, my savings, Jen's freelance work, Maria's tutoring money. Then came the investor call that changed everything. I was manning the front desk, trying to fix a bug in our notification system, when a woman walked in. Early 50s, sharp suit, the kind of confident presence that made everyone else in the room sit straighter. "I have an appointment with Maxwell Porter," she announced. I checked the calendar. Dr. Sarah Chen. "From Horizon Ventures?" She nodded, and I felt my heart skip. Horizon Ventures was one of the biggest players in health tech investment. As I called up to Maxwell's office, I noticed Dr. Chen glancing at my laptop screen. I quickly minimized my code window, but not before she raised an eyebrow. "Interesting architecture," she commented. "Building something." Before I could respond, Maxwell burst out of the elevator, all smiles and handshakes. "Sarah, wonderful to see you. Let me tell you about some exciting opportunities." They disappeared into the conference room, but not before Dr. Chen gave me a final, thoughtful look. That afternoon, after they finished their meeting, Dr. Chen stopped by my desk. "That looked like a therapy application you were working on," she said quietly, "with some unique security implementations I haven't seen before." I hesitated, then decided to take a risk. "Would you like to see more?" For the next 15 minutes, I showed her MindSpace, the e-learning algorithms, the sophisticated content filtering, the peer support network that matched users based on shared experiences rather than generic categories. "This is impressive," she said finally, "especially for someone working from a reception desk." She handed me her card. "Call my office tomorrow. Let's talk properly." That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called Horizon Ventures from my lunch break. Dr. Chen didn't waste time with small talk. "Your app solves problems I didn't see addressed in your competitor's product. Problems that tell me you actually understand this market." "You mean MindMender?" I tried to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Ah," she paused. "You know about that situation." "Situation. James Porter has been pitching us for additional funding, but his numbers aren't good. User retention is abysmal. Turns out copying an idea isn't the same as understanding it." My heart raced. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to discuss investment, real investment in a team that knows what they're doing." I gripped the phone tighter. "Even though I'm just a receptionist?" She laughed. "Honey, I started my first company from my car while working as a parking attendant. I know potential when I see it." The meeting was set for the following week, but first we had a major problem to solve. That evening during our team call, I broke the news. "We can't take investment while I'm still working here. It's a conflict of interest, possibly even a legal issue." "So quit," Maria said, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "And risk them coming after us legally, claiming I developed it on company time?" "Actually, Jen interrupted. I have an idea about that. Her plan was audacious, risky, and absolutely perfect. It's going to take perfect timing, I warned. Maria grinned. When has that ever stopped us? We spent the next week preparing everything. Every detail had to be perfect, because we weren't just launching an app anymore. We were setting a trap. And Maxwell Porter was about to walk right into it. The morning everything changed started like any other at Porter Tech's front desk. I answered calls, greeted visitors, and secretly checked our app's pre-launch metrics. MinSpace was ready. Our code was perfect, our security was ironclad, and our small army of beta testers was eager to spread the word. But timing would be everything. At exactly 9:15 a.m., right on schedule, James Porter stormed through the lobby, heading straight for his uncle's office. He didn't even glance at me, the invisible receptionist who had outsmarted him at every turn. I sent a quick text to Maria. Showtime. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with notifications. MindMender's App Store rating was plummeting. Hundreds of one-star reviews appeared within minutes, all with the same complaint. The app had crashed, deleting user data and exposing private messages. The bug we'd hidden in the code James stole was working perfectly. I could hear shouting from Maxwell's office. Through the glass walls, I saw James gesturing frantically at his laptop while Maxwell turned redder by the minute. At 9:30, Helen from HR hurried past my desk. A stack of papers clutched to her chest. She didn't notice that her security badge had slipped slightly, its reflection perfectly captured by my phone's camera. Another piece of evidence documented. At 9:45, Dr. Chen arrived for our scheduled meeting. I told her 10 o'clock, but as expected, she was early. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Quite a morning for mental health apps, she remarked casually, glancing at her phone. Have you seen what's happening with MindMender? I might have heard something, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Would you like some coffee while you wait? She smiled knowingly. No need. I think the show's about to start. Right on cue, Maxwell's office door burst open. He stormed toward the elevator, James trailing behind him. We have to shut it down, James was saying. The whole platform is compromised. Shut it? Maxwell sputtered. Do you know how much we've invested in this? The press release goes out in an hour. Actually, Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the lobby. I believe that press release needs some revision. Maxwell froze. Sarah? What are you doing here? Supporting innovation, she said smoothly. Real innovation, not stolen ideas packaged as original work. James went pale. I don't know what you're. Save it, Dr. Chen cut him off. We have proof that MindMender's code was copied from another project. A project that was, ironically, developed right here in your building. She gestured to my desk, where my laptop screen now displayed MinSpace's interface, nearly identical to MindMender's, but with a creation date months earlier. Maxwell's face went from red to white. Olivia? I stood up, smoothing my receptionist's blazer. Surprise. The next few minutes were chaos. Maxwell shouted about betrayal and threatened lawsuits. James tried to delete files from his phone, not realizing we'd already documented everything. Helen emerged from HR, clutching termination papers that would never be filed. Through it all, Dr. Chen watched with quiet amusement. Finally, when Maxwell paused for breath, I spoke. Before you threaten any more lawsuits, I said calmly, you should know that everything, from my original pitch to James stealing my code, has been documented, including some interesting financial transactions between Porter Tech and MindMender that the SEC might want to examine. Maxwell's jaw clenched. What do you want? Simple. You're going to publicly acknowledge that MindMender was based on stolen intellectual property. You're going to shut it down. And you're going to stay out of my way while I launch the real thing. Or what? Dr. Chen stepped forward. Or Horizon Ventures will be very interested in discussing these documents with our friends at the Justice Department. The silence that followed was deafening. Then something unexpected happened. From the elevator, a slow clap began. Standing there was Gary from it, grinning broadly. I wondered how long it would take them to figure it out, he said, walking over. By the way, boss, you should know that Olivia's been running her development through a private VPN. Never touched the company network. Totally legal. I checked. Maxwell looked like he might explode. You knew about this. Knew about it? I helped secure it. See, some of us actually care about innovation. Gary turned to me. Need a job. My startup could use a developer with your skills. Before Maxwell could respond, his phone chimed. Then mine. Then everyone's phones in the lobby. Breaking tech news. Mindspace launches. Revolutionary mental health app takes App Store by storm. Maria and Jen had pushed the launch button right on schedule. I turned my laptop around, showing the rapidly climbing download numbers. Oh, and you might want to check Mindspace's investor list. Dr. Chen isn't the only one who believes in original ideas. The names scrolled past: major venture capital firms, tech industry leaders, mental health professionals. We'd spent weeks quietly building support, preparing for this moment. Maxwell sank into a lobby chair, defeated. James was frantically texting, probably trying to salvage his reputation. Helen had disappeared back to HR, likely updating her resume. Dr. Chen touched my arm. Ready for that meeting now. I looked around the lobby one last time, at the desk where I'd spent 6 months coding in secret, at the security cameras that had documented everything, at the Wi-Fi router that had carried my app from idea to reality. Actually, I smiled. I have a better idea. Let's meet at my new office. I hear there's a tech startup looking to sublease Porter Tech's old space. 2 months later, I sat in what used to be Maxwell's office, now headquarters of Mindspace Technologies. Our app had passed 5 million downloads. Major healthcare providers were licensing our platform, and most importantly, we were actually helping people. Maria had joined full-time as our lead developer after graduating early. Jen had moved from Seattle to head our design team. Even Gary had jumped ship from Porter Tech, bringing his security expertise to protect our growing user base. Kate stopped by regularly, proud that her struggle had inspired something meaningful. Just promise me one thing, she said during one visit. Never get so successful that you forget why you built this. I pointed to the front desk visible through my office window. It was empty now, but I kept it as a reminder. That's why the desk stays, I told her. To remember that great ideas can come from anywhere, even from someone everyone else ignored. Porter Tech's stock had taken a hit after the MindMender scandal. Maxwell stepped down as CEO, though the press release called it a planned retirement. James had disappeared to some startup incubator in Singapore. But I didn't care about revenge anymore. We were too busy building something that mattered. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Chen. Our latest funding round had closed. The numbers made my head spin. As I looked out over the city skyline, the same view Maxwell used to enjoy, I opened Mindspace on my phone. Our mission statement shimmered on the screen. Everyone deserves to be heard. I thought about all the nights coding in secret, all the carefully laid plans, all the people who believed in us when we were nothing but an idea and some borrowed Wi-Fi. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so amazing that they're forced to watch from the sidelines, knowing they could have been part of it. My desk phone lit up, our new receptionist letting me know my next appointment had arrived. A young developer with an idea she wanted to pitch. Send her in, I said, clearing my schedule. After all, you never know where the next great idea might come from, even if it comes from someone sitting at the front desk, quietly changing the world.
The look on Uncle Richard's face was worth every sleepless night, every mocking comment, every moment of doubt I'd endured over the past 5 years. But let me start from the beginning. My name is James Sullivan, and I never took the traditional path. While my cousins went to prestigious universities, I worked full-time at our family's pharmaceutical manufacturing company, Sullivan Pharmaceuticals, taking online classes at night. Not because I couldn't get into a real college. I had been accepted to several, but because I saw something they didn't. The future of pharmaceutical manufacturing wasn't in the old methods my uncle clung to. It was in automation, in artificial intelligence, in systems that could adapt and learn. But to build that future, I needed to understand both the science and the practical reality of our industry. Another late night with your digital diploma mill. Uncle Richard would smirk whenever he caught me studying in my small office at the plant. He'd inherited control of the company when my father, his younger brother, died unexpectedly 6 years ago. My 10% ownership stake, left to me by Dad, was treated as a mere courtesy. "The future is changing, Uncle Richard," I'd reply, not looking up from my advanced robotics textbook. "We need to change with it." He'd laugh, that condescending chuckle that echoed through the boardroom whenever I tried to suggest improvements. The pharmaceutical industry is about tradition, James, about proven methods. League the sci-fi dreams to Silicon Valley. But while he was dismissing my ideas, I was watching our competitors, watching them struggle with the same problems we faced: contamination issues, production delays, quality control failures. Problems I knew could be solved with the right technology. My online degree wasn't just in engineering, it was a specialized program in pharmaceutical manufacturing automation. While my cousins were partying at their Ivy League schools, I was spending every free moment in our manufacturing plant, learning every process, every failure point, every opportunity for improvement. And I was building something that would change everything. "You're wasting your time," my cousin Michael, Uncle Richard's oldest son, told me one day. He just graduated from Harvard Business School and had been fast-tracked to VP of Operations. "Dad's never going to let some kid with an internet degree make major changes to his company." His company. That's how they all thought of it. They'd forgotten that my father had been the one to modernize Sullivan Pharmaceuticals in the first place, taking it from a small local operation to a regional powerhouse. They'd forgotten that his stake, my stake now, had been earned through innovation, not inheritance. But I hadn't forgotten, and I hadn't been wasting my time. For 3 years, I worked on my project in secret. During day shifts, I was just another mid-level employee, running quality control tests and maintaining equipment. But at night, in a small lab I'd set up in my apartment, I was building the future. I called it the Adaptive Manufacturing Intelligence System, ANIS, for short. It was more than just an automation system. It was an AI-driven platform that could monitor, adjust, and optimize pharmaceutical manufacturing processes in real time. It could predict equipment failures before they happened, adjust formulations for maximum efficiency, and ensure quality control standards that far exceeded FDA requirements. The patent application was filed under my name personally, not the company's. Uncle Richard's dismissal of my hobby meant he never asked me to sign an intellectual property agreement for my after-hours work. His arrogance would prove to be his biggest mistake. I finished my degree the same week I received notice that my patent had been approved. The timing couldn't have been better. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals was in trouble. Our largest competitor had just launched a new automated manufacturing system that cut their production costs by 30%. Our stock was falling. Shareholders were getting nervous. Uncle Richard called an emergency shareholders meeting. I sat quietly in the back, watching him try to calm the nervous investors with promises of cost-cutting measures and efficiency improvements. "We're implementing new standard operating procedures," he assured them, shooting a warning glance at Michael, who was squirming in his seat. What the shareholders didn't know was that 3 batches had failed quality control that week alone. At this rate, we'd lose our FDA certification within months. "Perhaps," I spoke up, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room, "we should discuss alternative solutions." Uncle Richard's face darkened. "This isn't the time for your theories, James. The adults are talking." I stood, straightening my tie, the same tie Dad had worn to his first board meeting. "Actually, Uncle Richard, this is exactly the time. Especially given the failed batches you're trying to hide from the shareholders." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Michael half rose from his seat, but Uncle Richard waved him down. Your online degree is worthless, he announced, trying to regain control of the room. Step aside and let real businessmen handle this. I smiled, feeling the weight of the documents in my briefcase. Dad had always told me timing was everything in business. He was right. Without this, I said calmly, pulling out my patent documents, your company is worth nothing. The room went silent. What are you talking about? Uncle Richard demanded, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. I opened my laptop, connecting it to the presentation screen. Let me show you the future of pharmaceutical manufacturing. The future I've spent the last 3 years building while you were busy mocking my education. As ANIS came to life on the screen, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened window. I saw Dad there, in my stance, in my determination. He'd always believed in me, always supported my unconventional path. Now it was time to show everyone why. The shareholders leaned forward as I began my presentation, their eyes widening as they realized what I'd created. Uncle Richard sank into his chair, his face pale, as the full implications of my patent became clear. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving yourself right. And I was just getting started. The presentation screen glowed behind me as I demonstrated ANIS in action. I'd installed a test version in a sealed section of our manufacturing plant. Another detail Uncle Richard had been too arrogant to notice. Over the past 3 months, I explained, pulling up the comparison data. This system has run parallel to our current production line. The results speak for themselves. The numbers flashed across the screen. 45% reduction in production costs. 98% decrease in quality control failures. Real-time adaptation to manufacturing variables that had plagued the industry for decades. Impossible, Michael blurted out. Those numbers can't be real. I smiled, clicking to the next slide. The FDA certification team visited last week. Would you like to see their preliminary report? Uncle Richard's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. You had no authority to install experimental systems in our facility. This is a violation of... Actually, I interrupted. I had full authority. Check my employee contract. As quality control supervisor, I'm empowered to test new quality assurance methods. Everything was done by the book. I turned to the shareholders. What you're seeing isn't just an improvement. It's a revolution in pharmaceutical manufacturing. And the patent? I held up the documents. It's already being called the most significant innovation in the industry in 20 years. The room erupted in excited chatter. I could see dollar signs in the investors' eyes as they grasped the implications. Our competitors would pay billions for this technology. One shareholder called out. They already have, I replied calmly. I received offers from 3 major pharmaceutical companies this morning. They're quite interested in the fact that Sullivan Pharmaceuticals doesn't own the patent rights. Uncle Richard stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. This is outrageous. You developed this while working for us. The company owns nothing. I cut in. I developed this on my own time, with my own resources. The patent is registered to me personally. Your repeated insistence that my work was worthless and unofficial meant you never had me sign an IP agreement. A fact my lawyers thoroughly documented. I clicked to the final slide. A sales projection showing Sullivan Pharmaceuticals' future with and without ANIS. The contrast was stark. Without this system, we'll lose FDA certification within 6 months. Our competitors' automated systems have made our current methods obsolete. With ANIS, I gestured to the upward climbing graph. We become the industry leader in pharmaceutical manufacturing technology. The boardroom doors opened, and 3 people walked in. Uncle Richard's face went from purple to ash white as he recognized them. Allow me to introduce David Chin from Merck, Sarah Williams from Pfizer, and Thomas Rodriguez from Johnson & Johnson, I said pleasantly. They've each expressed strong interest in acquiring my patent. I invited them to today's meeting to observe the technology in action. Michael jumped up. This is a closed shareholders meeting. You can't. Actually, I held up a document. As a shareholder, I can invite relevant parties to observe non-confidential technological demonstrations. It's in the company bylaws, the ones Dad wrote. The 3 pharmaceutical representatives took seats at the back of the room, their interested gazes fixed on the presentation screen. So, I continued, we have a choice to make. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals can license my technology, maintaining family ownership, but paying standard market rates for the patent rights. Or, I glanced at the industry representatives. I can accept one of the several very generous offers I've received. Uncle Richard slammed his fist on the table. This is blackmail. No, I corrected him. This is business. The kind of business you claimed I couldn't understand with my worthless online degree. I pulled out another document, this one considerably thicker. This is my offer to Sullivan Pharmaceuticals. Exclusive license rights to ANIS with certain conditions. What conditions? A shareholder asked eagerly. First, a restructuring of the board. My father's vision for this company was about innovation, not stagnation. We need leadership that understands that. Uncle Richard's face contorted. You want my position? No, I said quietly. I want the position I earned. Chief Technology Officer, with a seat on the board. The patent rights come with my appointment. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Without my technology, Sullivan Pharmaceuticals would fail within months. With it, we'd dominate the market. And if we refuse? Michael asked, his Harvard confidence cracking. I gestured to the industry representatives. Then I walk across the street to one of our competitors. My patent, my choice. One of the shareholders, an elderly man who'd known my father, spoke up. Richard, we need to vote on this now. Uncle Richard looked around the room, seeing his support crumbling. 20 years of ruling the company through fear and tradition, undone in a single morning. This isn't over, he hissed. Actually, I replied, it is, because there's one more thing you should know. I nodded to my lawyer, who had been waiting quietly by the door. She distributed copies of one final document to the board members. What's this? Uncle Richard demanded, scanning the pages. The results of the internal audit I commissioned 3 months ago. It seems there have been some irregularities in the company's recent FDA compliance reports. Irregularities that coincide with Michael's appointment as VP of Operations. Michael went pale. Uncle Richard started to speak, but I held up my hand. The full report has already been submitted to the relevant authorities. So you have a choice, Uncle Richard. Accept my offer, or explain to the FDA why our compliance reports don't match our actual production records. The room exploded into chaos. Board members huddled in corners. Whispered conversations filled the air. And through it all, I stood calmly at the podium, watching my uncle's empire crumble. Dad had taught me that success in business wasn't about prestigious degrees or family connections. It was about vision, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what you built. As the board called for an immediate vote on my proposal, I caught my reflection again in the window. This time, I didn't just see Dad's determination in my stance. I saw his smile. 6 months can change everything. I stood in my new office, my father's old office, looking out over the manufacturing floor. Below, ANMIS hummed quietly, its adaptive systems orchestrating a perfect dance of automation and precision. Our production efficiency had increased by 250% since full implementation, and our stock price had tripled. The door opened, and Maria Rodriguez, our new VP of Operations, entered with the latest performance reports. "The FDA inspectors just left," she announced, grinning. "They're calling us the new gold standard in pharmaceutical manufacturing. They want to use our facility as a model for updated industry regulations." I nodded, remembering Uncle Richard's dire predictions about how my experimental system would destroy the company's reputation. He'd been wrong about that, just as he'd been wrong about so many things. The aftermath of that shareholders' meeting had been swift and decisive. The board had voted unanimously to accept my proposal, though not just because of the patent. The FDA compliance irregularities had been worse than even I'd suspected. Michael had been cooking the books for months, hiding quality control failures to protect his position. When the full investigation concluded, he'd faced criminal charges. Uncle Richard had been forced to resign to avoid being implicated in the cover-up. "Have you seen today's Wall Street Journal?" Maria asked, handing me the paper. The headline read, "Sullivan Pharmaceuticals leads industry revolution. Stock soars on innovative AI manufacturing system." Below was a smaller headline, "Former CEO Richard Sullivan faces SEC investigation in separate venture." I set the paper aside. Uncle Richard's downfall wasn't my concern anymore. I had bigger things to focus on. Like the research center I'd established in my father's name, offering scholarships to online students developing innovative pharmaceutical technologies, or the mentorship program helping employees earn degrees while working, just as I had. My phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Sarah Chen at MIT. Her team wanted to collaborate on expanding ANIS's capabilities into biotechnology manufacturing. 5 years ago, someone with my worthless online degree wouldn't have gotten a response from MIT. Now they were calling me. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. To my surprise, it was Aunt Helen, Uncle Richard's wife. "James," she said softly, "do you have a moment?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat, looking uncomfortable in the office where her husband had once reigned. "I wanted to thank you," she began, "for what you did for Tommy." Tommy was my youngest cousin, Uncle Richard's second son. Unlike Michael, he'd never fit the mold of the privileged executive. He'd been quietly taking online engineering courses, hiding his studies from his father just as I had. After the shakeup, I'd found his application in the HR system rejected on Uncle Richard's orders. Now he was thriving in our technical division, his worthless online degree proving just as valuable as mine had. "Tommy earned his position," I replied, "just like everyone else here." Aunt Helen nodded, tears in her eyes. "Richard was wrong about so many things. About you, about education, about how to run this company." She paused. "Your father would be proud." Would he? I looked around the office at the changes I'd made. The old mahogany furniture had been replaced with modern workstations. The walls of family photos now shared space with technical diagrams and real-time manufacturing displays. But his most important lessons remained: integrity, innovation, and the courage to forge your own path. My computer chimed. An alert from ANIS. The system had automatically detected and corrected a minor variation in one of our production lines. maintaining perfect quality without human intervention. Another small miracle that my internet degree had helped create. "How's Uncle Richard doing?" I asked, though I already knew. The industry newsletters kept track of his attempts to start over, each one failing as investors remembered the FDA scandal. "He's adjusting," Aunt Helen said carefully. "The SEC investigation has been difficult, but maybe it's what he needed. He's finally realizing that the world has changed." Indeed it had. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals had transformed from a traditional manufacturing company into a technology leader. Our market cap had grown from $50 million to over $2 billion in 6 months. Competitors who had once dismissed us were now licensing our technology. And it had all started with an online degree and a dream that wouldn't die. My assistant buzzed in. The quarterly board meeting was about to start. Aunt Helen stood to leave. "James," she said at the door, "I heard about the scholarship program you started. The one for online students." I nodded. Richard saw it too. He didn't say anything, but I think he finally understands what he failed to see before. After she left, I walked down to the manufacturing floor. The employees no longer stopped working when the boss appeared. They were too engrossed in their tasks, too proud of their contributions to this new era of pharmaceutical manufacturing. Tommy was at his station, fine-tuning one of AIS's sensor arrays. His online degree in robotics engineering hung proudly on the wall of his workspace, just like mine did in the office upstairs. "How's the calibration going?" I asked. He grinned, gesturing to his screen. The AI suggested a modification to the sensor alignment. It's improving accuracy by another 3%. I watched the system work, marveling at how something that had started as sketches on my apartment wall had grown into this. The future of pharmaceutical manufacturing, built by a kid with an online degree who refused to believe his education was worthless. Back in my office, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the nameplate that had once sat on Uncle Richard's desk. Richard Sullivan, CEO. It read in pompous gold letters. I dropped it in the recycling bin. My new nameplate was simpler, cleaner. James Sullivan, Chief Technology Officer. Below it was a small engraving of the first line of code I'd written for AMIS, back when it was just a dream. The board meeting would start soon. Another quarter of record profits to report, new innovations to discuss, more boundaries to push. But first, I sent a quick email to the head of our scholarship program. Double the number of online degree scholarships for next year. And add a note to the application. No degree is worthless if you have the vision to use it. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving that success comes not from where you learned, but what you do with that knowledge. And sometimes, a worthless degree becomes priceless when combined with determination, integrity, and the courage to change an industry. Uncle Richard had been right about one thing. Tradition was important in the pharmaceutical industry. But he'd forgotten that every tradition started with someone willing to try something new. As I headed to the board meeting, I passed the company's mission statement, newly updated after my takeover. Sullivan Pharmaceuticals, where innovation meets integrity. Below it, in smaller letters, was my father's favorite quote: "Education is never worthless. Vision is priceless." He'd been right all along.